The finance ministers of G7 nations have released a statement saying that the group is considering joint steps to increase pressure on Russia by targeting countries that continue to increase purchases of Russian oil. The ministers have also agreed on key trade measures, including tariffs and export bans, as another step to cut off Russian revenues. The statement includes measures to significantly reduce remaining imports from Russia, including hydrocarbons that is still being imported by Europe. This comes after President Donald Trump earlier called on European countries to further reduce purchases from Russia. The move also targets countries like China and India, which have significantly increased purchases of Russian oil since the start of the war. India in particular has been hit by an additional 25% of tariffs over purchases of Indian oil by the United States. The G7 statement on restricting countries from buying Russian oil is a significant development for the global oil market as well. Now for this discussion, we're joined by retired Major General G.G. Dwivedi. He's a defense analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, what are the potential implications for the G7's push to pressure countries, especially like India and China, over their oil purchases from Russia?
Well, firstly, Suma, thank you for having me on your show. Well, this decision by the G7 countries' finance ministers to bring in further sanctions on those countries which are purchasing oil from Russia definitely has a significant impact on India, because India is one of the major purchasers of oil from Russia. In fact, last year it was to the tune of about $52 billion. But the point is that we need to see this in the overall context. Firstly, the G7 finance minister's statement comes, it is in sync with President Putin's tariff war. And it is also in sync with their understanding that to cut down the revenues to Russia so that its capacity to continue the war in Ukraine is hampered. And this is the larger context that this statement should be seen. And also we need to also see that who are the major purchasers of Russian oil. But for India, India is not purchasing as much as China. In fact, China purchased about 100 million tons of oil last year. Even Europe has been importing Russian gas, in fact, to the tune of about $16 billion last year. So the point we have to understand is that we first and foremost, no country can be coerced or forced to do its trade or purchases by a group of countries. And the second is that as India has been hit by the 50% additional tariffs, I think India also is taking into cognizance that we can diversify our purchases of oil, because today the difference between the Russian crude oil and the global crude oil is very minimal. So I am sure certain amount of understanding is being done on this scope. But the point at issue is that as far as the G7 finance minister statement is concerned, I think it comes in the overall preview of US tariff war on those countries which are purchasing oil from Russia. And as President President Trump had stated that those countries who are buying oil from Russia are fueling the Ukraine war. So all I can say is that this statement must be taken with seriousness, and countries like India must take cognizance so that we are not hit with further tariffs. At the same time, certain negotiation must be undertaken so that there is understanding and we can also diversify our purchase of oil. But at the end of the day, I think this will definitely impact the countries who are purchasing oil from Russia, and also the Russian revenue, because the major Russian revenue is coming from a sale of oil and gas and energy. Asuma.
And Major General, is NATO's focus on penalizing countries like India and China for purchasing this Russian oil is it distracting from its own continued reliance on Russian energy?
Definitely, because it's a double talk. Because the European nations, as I said, have imported about almost $16 billion worth of gas from Russia. And secondly, the India's oil also is finding its way to Europe because water India is refining, part of this oil is also going to European countries. In fact, initially the American did not raise any observation or any dissent on this because they found that India purchasing oil from Russia will stabilize the global prices. But now this turn of policy under Trump has come off late, and therefore I think there can't be double talk on this issue. The European nation, in case they want to impose sanctions on those countries which are purchasing oil from Russia, that I think charity must begin from home, and they must be the first one to cut off the purchases of oil and gas from Russia. And as I said, that standards or the principles and laws should be universally applicable. You cannot be selective in that, and therefore you should not target only selective countries. If the policies are made, then they should be across the board and not single out countries just because of either political reasons or even personal reasons. Asuma.
And Major General, how do you think India should navigate going forward, as it's very, very sensitive now?
Absolutely, because it is sensitive, because it is going to impact India's economy, because in case the sanctions are put through, it will almost be a loss of something to the tune of about $50 billion to our economy. And there are two things which are actually happening at the same time. First and foremost, India is negotiating the FTA with America, and the talks are on. Still, there is hope that this move forward will definitely take place in time to come. And at the same time, India is also considering to diversify its oil purchases and energy requirement, because if this is going to impact our larger economy, I'm sure that our planners would be looking at alternate purchases. And let me also tell you that America has interest in this. America wants to sell their own oil and own energy, so therefore they would like India to also diversify and go into their markets. But the point at issue is that India would definitely be taking a very strategic and long-term view as to how to overcome this issue. And I'm sure the policies will undergo certain degree of change so that our economy is not impacted. At the same time, we also exercise strategic autonomy, and as a sovereign nation, we have the right to buy from wherever we find as per the market forces. So I think a couple of these issues will be on the table to diversify and also to ensure that our economic interests are not hurt by this proposal of the G7 Finance Minister Conference and the decisions that have been taken thereof. Asuma.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us and sharing that insight throughout. Now we move on